airlines and why tickets will stay cheap. So a lot of the time right now we're looking on Google Flights and we're looking wherever and we're like, wow, everything's super cheap. Is this going to last? And the truth of the matter is, yes, it is. It is going to last. And why? Because consumer confidence doesn't just bounce back right away. When we do open the country back up and we start having more travel and we allow more public transportations and we don't have shelters in places, it's not going to automatically mean someone's going to jump up and they're going to, go, put their credit card and head out to Cancun. Maybe some millennials will, but overall, it's not going to be like that. It's going to take a few years for these airlines to get back to, what they were doing. One, and most importantly as well, most of us are going to be out of a job. We got to, figure out a way to get back into work and get our feet under us and figure out how we're going to continue on in life and this new life we're going to live. And also there probably will be ramifications to social distancing even when we open the country back up. So this might bleed into the airline industry. There might be rules that say, hey, we don't, we're only going to have this many people or that many people, so there's still a lot of like questions in the air. So what does questions lead to? It leads to cheaper flights and it leads to a lot of pressure on these airline companies. Now, airlines in general stocks, the airline stocks are looking very, very cheap. But you got to remember, I'm saying it a good thing right now. You got to remember that a while back, Buffett finally invested into airlines. And that was like a running joke. Hey, if you're a billionaire and you want to become a millionaire, what do? Invest in an airline, right? Because it was super competitive. And the elasticity, because gas prices, there's a lot of X factors that go into that business, right? First off, the planes are on lease. It depends on your credit and like where the interest rates are. So there's that. Depends on how much gas you're getting. It depends on the pilots you're paying. And it depends. There's a lot of things that go into it. And a lot of airlines would just go belly up. They just couldn't get big enough, or they couldn't find their niche. And if they did find their niche and they just were making just this much and it didn't make sense, right? Like, they had $100 million and they were only making like two or three. They're like, this doesn't make sense to tie all this money up. We could do something else. And if they try to expand, that's usually when they, would fall apart. So if you haven't noticed in the last like decade, why flights have become more cheaper and more efficient is a lot of these airlines just kind of made a cartel in a sense. They made like a OPEC. They have a lot of alliances and agreements with each other now, and they work with each other, and that's why you only see about like 5 or 6 major players instead of like 20 or 30 back in the day. There still are some private airlines out there, and of course there's jet companies are popping up like crazy, but for the airlines, for the most part, they got their routes, they got their niche, and they got their areas, and they are good stocks. And I was a personal investor, full disclosure, in American Airlines, and I had not a lot. I think my shares were like up to like 24K before I decided to pull out. But that was built up over the time because I think Buffett invested in Delta. So I started looking at it. And then the news that I made me buy American was the fact that they had their, one of the biggest problems they had coming up was renegotiating with their pilots. Well, American Airlines signed them up, for another 3-4 years. And I was like, okay, this is pretty solid. And no one predicted COVID-19, at the time. And this was like in 2017. But things are going solid. And even now, I mean, they were earning, great amounts of money, and they're making, transition and changes, and jets are always getting better and more people are flying. But with this impact, I mean, it's going to be a long while before they come back. So, don't be so scared or, in a rush to, I guess, book tickets right away, because these prices are probably going to be here to stay at least for the rest of this year. And it's going to take a while for them to come back. And it's like, okay, well, when do I buy airline stocks? When do I do? Like I said, we have to wait, guys, because this bailout essentially is going to keep them alive. But if this thing bills, or not bills, but bleeds into, possibly a year, and they end up having to, and if it gets so bad that we just stop all air travel everywhere, for months on end, and they got to pay for all the workers and everything. I mean, it could get a lot more uglier before it could get a lot more prettier, right? And remember, we're investors. We don't want to buy on speculating. We don't want to catch a falling knife. Like if a falling knife is when the stock's coming down, it's like a knife. It's just going to go down quickly. And you don't want to catch that. Why would you want to catch that, right? And catch it means like, why would you want to buy that? Like, I'll take it. No, let it hit the ground. And when does rock bottom? When does that mean? So let's say if a stock got to like $5, right? And it was worth 52 weeks was worth $50, right? So it made a huge tumble down from 50 to 5. But then you see it bounce up to like 15, and then it goes down to like 12, and then it stays around 16, and then it just kind of, mellows out. And then you wait a quarter, and then you find a good base price. And that's when, as an investor, you should come in and say, okay, I wasn't willing to risk all my money because it could have went from 5 to 0, right? Or it could have went from 5 to 3, and it could take, decades, it could, to go back up to like, 10. So, why risk that? You're not in business to, of course you're always taking on a risk, but you're not in business to take on crazy gambles. You want to make sound investments. You want to make it to the point where, hey, this thing is going to return me 4 or 5% a year. It's pretty steady. We're good. You could sleep at night with having to stress about this stuff, versus if you buy an airline today, let's say at like $12, $15, and you're like, oh, they're going to bounce back, and they go down all the way to $3 to $2 because you have to recapitalize, or something happens and you're like, oh my God, I lost, almost all my money. They got cut way more, those stocks got cut more than in half. I lost 80% of my value, and now what do you do? So it's like you want to find that baseline, and when you find that baseline, that's when you want to go in. But I think in the long run, the airline industry is healthy. It will be fine. World travel will expand as you see emerging markets becoming into the more and more into the middle class. But as of right now, I would kind of hold off on it and just wait, and just kind of see how things, like I said, I'm going to keep saying it over and over, see how things shake up. Hey, if you like the content, go ahead and shoot a like. If you have any questions, hit it up in there or shoot my DMs. And if you could DM this to one friend, that would help a lot.